Welcome back to Craftsman David. Today I'm going to talk about my X-Carve and give you my conclusions on it. I've had it now for 4 months and I've done a few projects, mostly signs and making stuff for the X-Carve like the dust boot. I really love the table I built. I have a video on that which you can look through my channel and find. And the dust boot is okay. It actually picks up dust pretty well and I haven't had a whole lot of trouble with it losing bristles. I have a video on making that as well.
To better organize this review, I made a list of pros and cons, so let's start with the first negative, Windows Vista connection.
My setup has changed since I started. You can see here I have a bandsaw that's different but it serves the same purpose. And I have a different computer that is running X-Carve than I did when I initially bought it. The computer change was necessary because my old college laptop was running Windows Vista and that did not talk to the Arduino very well. I had trouble getting it consistently to connect to X-Carve. I called the X-Carve company and they advised me that both Windows 7 and Vista do not work super well connecting with the Arduino. I solved that by going with Windows 10. I haven't had much trouble with that. When it doesn't connect, I find that just unplugging the USB port and plugging it back in solves the problem.
Next, I'm going to talk about some of the negatives of using easel.
So this review won't be super fun unless I make a project, so I'm going to make a sign, just Craftsman David, and here it is in easel. And to change the text, I want to change David to Dave, and I'll double click, and you can see I just need to delete the last 2 letters, so I hit backspace. But look at this! Backspace also works as the back button in Microsoft Edge, and it's asking me if I want to go back. No, I don't. Stay on this page, and that makes editing text in easel super annoying.
Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to import things in easel. I like using, this is called DraftSite. It's very similar to AutoCAD, except it's a knockoff made by Dassault Systems, which is the SolidWorks people. You can see this is my dust boot, an early revision of it. It's made of arcs and lines that form the perimeter. If I touch this construction line in the center, you can read over here, it's exactly 8.008 inches long. First step is to save this as a DXF file. Then I'll bring it into Inkscape. Inkscape allows me to import the DXF and resave it as an SVG file, which is the only thing that easel understands. Now if I go to easel, I can import that SVG file. I can find it as dustboot1 SVG, open, and it looks pretty good on the surface, but if I click these pieces, you can see they're all individual lines or arcs. They're not a continuous piece. That means if I want to cut on the outside rather than just along the path, I want to cut on the outside with the router bit. It says I can't do it. It's not one piece. It doesn't know what side's outside. So that's not real great. And also notice that my 8-inch piece is now slightly over 8 inches long. That's another thing. When you import SVG, they never come into scale. Instead, you have to select everything, go to the shape, and right here where it says width, I need to correct it by saying it's 8 inches. Then I can put it back to scale. Okay, the scaling I can deal with, but I called X-Carve's technical support about the polyline problem. Again, I have a test piece here, and it's multiple lines that make the shape. And again, it's exactly 8 inches long. And they advised me to first save it as a PDF. So here I got it here, save it as PDF. Then there's a website I can use to convert a PDF to an SVG file. And so here's that SVG file. And now I can bring this into easel, so File, Import SVG, and I'll come down and I'll find the test 4x8 from PDF. Here it is, and look at that. It's perfect. It's all one piece. I can choose to fill it. I can cut on the outside. I can cut on the inside. The scaling isn't quite right. If you notice, it's over 9 inches long. But I can change that by going to Shape, lock this, and hit 8 inches. And boom, I'm ready to cut that shape out. Problem solved, right? So let's try that trick one more time, but this time with something that has arcs in it. You can see again, I have separate lines and arcs making up the shape, and it's 8 inches long. Save it as a PDF, go to the website, convert that to an SVG file, go to easel, File, Import SVG, and I'll find my test arc from PDF, open that up. Here it is. It's not the right scale, but we knew that that would be the case. Let me see if the arcs, and look at that. It's separate pieces. It did not work. So I have not found a solution to this problem. What I found is that arcs make all the difference. If you're converting from PDF, The lines will all be one piece, but the arcs will not be part of the lines. And that's a problem I have not solved.
And I also want to show how volatile easel is.
Here I got a simple sign I'm trying to make. It's just text. I drew it up on my computer in the house. I came out here, I struggled to open it, and now that I'm trying to carve, it's giving me an error bar, and my router is not moving at all. It's just sitting, trying to generate toolpaths, and failing. Next on the list, we'll talk about the need to square the gantry.
Because the gantry isn't super stiff with the 1 meter version, you can see I can move this side, I don't know, a little bit before this side starts to follow. If I'm doing something that's important to keep square, I have to take a square, and it's not too bad. I just make sure that I have it square before I turn on the power. And once I turn on the power, stepper motors lock, so it's going to stay square for my carve. So it's not really a big deal, but something to keep in mind.
Now we're ready to start our carve, but easel doesn't always choose the most efficient path, which is my next negative point. Notice in this shot how inefficiently easel is telling Xcarve to cut out this R. You'd think that it would do a full layer, then move down, do another full layer until it's got the whole letter cut out, but it doesn't. It hops all over the place, and the Z-axis is much slower than X and Y, so it's inefficient. Professional camming software could probably cut this in half the time.
Okay, that took just under 20 minutes. Let's take a look.
Be prepared, my next con on the list is poor letter cutting.
So let's take a look at these letters. They look pretty good, but they're not quite perfect. There's a little bit of tear out on the edges, that's why there's all these rufflies around, and those aren't a big deal. I'm more concerned about the actual graphic imperfections, and I apologize, my camera doesn't focus when I get real close to things. But right here, this A has kind of a ledge, so the top layer cut this little loop, and then when it went deeper, it didn't continue to do that. So now that letter looks a little funny. Then over here, if I look at this N, the A has a nice oval right here on both sides, and this N, this oval here, it's kind of hard to tell, it kind of looped up, and it's not really right. And then if you take a look at this V, it actually left a little bit of material in the bottom there that I have to come back with a chisel and take away. So it does cut letters okay, but it's not quite as perfect as I imagined a digital carving machine would carve things.
Let's switch and talk about some of the good things about Xcarve, including the assembly instructions and the mechanically sound kit. On the downside, there were no extra parts.
This kit, mechanically putting together the rails with the rollers, with the stepper motors, beautiful kit. It really went together with a breeze. The only challenge I had was figuring out how I was going to plug in my router, because they didn't have a solution for running the 110 volt electricity through the drag chain. I had to ruin an extension cord. And also the fact that it didn't come with any extra parts. There was no extra bolts, washers, nothing. It gave you exactly what you needed. It was kind of like Legos that way, where you put together your little toy, and when you're done, you don't have any more Legos. This was the same way. And that's not a huge deal. If you do run out of parts, most American hardware stores are going to carry some metric screws, definitely metric nuts, washers, and flat washers. The only thing that you got to make sure that you don't misplace are the customized stuff, like some of the spacers and things that work just with this kit. Make sure you don't displace those, because you'll have to order them again from Xcarve on their website.
More good points include deflection and motor power.
The other thing that wasn't a problem, and I thought it would be, is if I put this in the middle here, and I put the carriage in the middle of this rail, this is the point of maximum flex, and you can see it does flex quite a bit, but it really hasn't been a problem carving. I've carved with 1/8 inch bits, and I've carved with 1/4 inch bits, and all my carvings turn out just fine. It seems like if you're really having trouble where it's wiggling around a lot, you should be lowering your feed rate anyway. And you're probably going to be skipping steps at that point. So that hasn't been a big deal. And I also haven't had any problems with the power of these stepper motors. That was another concern of mine, is are the stepper motors going to have the power to push through some of the materials? After I initially bought the machine and I turned up the amperage, you may remember that in the video, they really haven't been a problem at all. I've hardly skipped any steps. It's carved just fine.
Now for another negative is the poor arc interpolation.
I'm not really happy with the circles that Xcarve cut out. These circles were drawn in easel and cut out with easel, and they're not circular. There's a flat spot here and here. All of the y-axis movements have flat spots, and I'm not real happy about that. I was thinking about whether that was caused by a software or the machine or my design. I've decided it must be the easel software, because in order to make a circle, there's a lot of complicated movement that has to happen between the two axes. And I think that it just does a really coarse interpolation of the actual circle, and I didn't get the detail I wanted in here.
Next, I want to point out how much I love the 1/8 inch precision collet kit.
I bought the 1/8 inch precision collet kit to go with this router, and don't worry folks, this whole system's unplugged. And I think that is well worth the money. I've been running the 1/8 inch bit a lot more. They're a lot cheaper to buy when you burn them out. If you remember my first video, I kind of toasted my first 1/4 inch bit I had in there. The 1/8 inch bits seem to run forever. I put this one in and I've never changed it out yet, and it still carves just fine.
There is one major downside with the kit. I'll show that here.
I still can't get the bit out. I gotta figure out a way to pry this collet out of its seat somehow. The best way that I've come up with to remove this is if I put a little block of wood here, 3/4 inch, it'll brace against the motor hub. And then I got a flat blade screwdriver that I can get into this groove. And from there we go. It worked. I just had to get a different angle. Now that the sign is all carved out, I can take it off.
My final negative point is what happens when your internet browser stalls during a cut.
So here's another very strange thing that happened. I'm cutting out these dust boots and it cut to there and then it stopped. And if I look at the computer, it still thinks it's cutting. What is going on? What I figured out is happening is that because easel is cloud-based, if you lose your internet connection or your computer goes to sleep during a carve, suddenly Arduino loses connection and it doesn't know what to do, so Arduino sends the router back to home. Now that's very bad because there's no way to recover that carve and continue where it was left off. The best you can do is try to estimate where your home position was last time and try to recarve it, but that doesn't always turn out so well, and I've ruined a couple carves now because of this. I have the computer set so that it doesn't ever go to sleep, so in my case it was losing internet connection because I don't have a great connection system out here. I thought that it would be nice that easel's cloud-based because I could design in the house at my nice computer and come out here to the cheaper computer I bought and just run things.
So let's add that to the list. Number 6, file transfer between computers is good because easel is cloud-based.
And of course, don't forget about our sign. I've sanded this all smooth to get rid of all those frizzlies. Now I'm going to take some white spray paint and just go over it. And there you go. A few swipes with the planer took off that top layer of white paint. I also thinned the board down quite a bit, and I could sand it, bevel it, and do some other fancy things, but basically it's ready to hang up. Project done. So now what you're probably anxious to hear, how much did I spend on all this? Well, my X-Carve kit was $1,268.47. That was shipped to my doorstep. I bought the bigger stepper motors, and I got the DeWalt router kit. I got the Acme lead screw for the Z-axis, and I got the precision 1/8 inch collet kit for holding the 1/8 inch bits. I did not buy the tool kit from Inventables. I did not buy the limit switch kit, and I did not buy the waste board, which saved me a lot of money. I made my own waste board out of material I already had. I used 1/4-20 inserts that cost me about $20 to buy all those threaded inserts. I also made the table that folds down out of scraps that I already had. I spent about $50 on parts to make that work, including furnace filters, the fan that cools the electronics, the hardware, and the brackets here that hold X-Carve down. I spent about $225 on this new computer to run X-Carve. I got a great deal on it. It was literally the cheapest computer I could find that had Windows 10. And I also spent about $50 on the dust boot because acrylic is not cheap. I also had to buy the shop vac fitting and all those bristles. And the Velcro. The Velcro is not cheap, surprisingly. So if you add all that stuff up, I'm in it for about $1,650. And that's as of the spring of 2016. I bought X-Carve in January. It's now May. And that sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not too bad as CNC machines go. Especially for one that cuts 30 inches by 30 inches. I think for about $1,600 you can buy those CNC piranhas that are about a foot by a foot from Rockler Woodworking or Woodcraft. I don't know what kind of software those come with. You can also get Shapeoko 3 for about $1,000, I think. That's sort of the biggest competitor to X-Carve.
So let's add that to the list. X-Carve's not a good value, it's a great value.
So now, as for my conclusions, I feel the biggest downfall with X-Carve is the easel software. In my next steps for X-Carve, I'm going to move to Universal G-Code Sender. It's a free program that you can download, and it just reads G-code and sends it to the machine. Now, easel can be used to generate the G-code, and you can then save it to your desktop and then run it through Universal G-Code Center. But I don't think I'm going to do that either. I'm going to actually pay the money and buy a professional CAM software. I'm looking at VCarve Pro as one that I'm considering buying. It's a $700 program. So keep that in mind if you're looking at X-Carve. You might have to add the cost of getting VCarve Pro to it, because I don't think even a hobbyist would be happy with easel.
Now to finish the list, let's also remember that X-Carve has great information availability on their website and great tech support.
So now the bottom line, would I recommend X-Carve to a friend? Would I buy it again? And the answer is yes. I love having the X-Carve. It opens up a whole new possibility of things that I can do, and even if you have to buy the VCarve software, you'll be in it for about $2,000, and that's still unbelievable for a 30-inch by 30-inch CNC machine. Now there are some people out there that would argue CNC machines are not really woodworking anymore, and they'd have a point. If you're one of those people that woodworking is about your hobby and it's about putting your heart and soul into a piece of wood with you and the chisel, making an heirloom piece to give away to someone you love, then yeah, you might not like CNC machines. But if you're more mathematical, more engineering based, you like consistency, you like complicated things that you can make easily, then CNC machines are for you, and I think that's why it appeals to me. I think once I get the VCarve software, it's going to be even better. So stay tuned. After I get VCarve and Universal G-Code Center, I'll do another update video talking about whether that was worth it. Until then, have a good night. Thanks for watching. And please don't forget to subscribe.